Happy Hump Day, everybody. It's Hump Day Q&A with Sophie from Happy Baby Sleep. Tonight's question comes from Carly, and she's asked about night weaning. So how do you know when the right time is to night wean? And is there any exceptions? So once you've night weaned with illness and teething and milestones and that sort of thing, is it okay to have the occasional feed once you have night weaned officially? So to answer the first part of the question, there are a few things that I like to address before night weaning, so to speak. So I want to make sure that your baby's at least 6 months. In my experience, it's really more 8 to 9 months. Breastfed babies tend to take longer than bottle-fed babies, and you want to make sure that they're getting enough during the day. So the last thing you want to be doing is cutting out night feeds when they may not be having enough during the day. What I see a lot of, especially when solids aren't established and they're not eating too much during the day, and also from 6 months when they start to become more aware of their environment and more distracted during the day for feeding, they don't feed so well. So they can compensate with better feeds at night. So you don't want to be cutting that out before you know that they're getting enough during the day. Also want to rule out them being premature, because premature babies have additional feeding needs, among other things, until 12 months and beyond. And you want them to be healthy weight range. So you wouldn't want to really be, if your baby's sort of in the lower percentile for weight for their age, you probably wouldn't want to be night weaning at this stage. And I would always recommend, if you're unsure before you night wean or take any recommendations to night wean, that you do check with your paediatrician or healthcare professional. So in an ideal world, weaning, the perfect example of weaning would be if a child was on a dream feed, say between 10 and 11 o'clock, and then one other feed at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and then waking as normal between 6 or 7. So signs to look out for that is if they're having the dream feed and then they're only having a small feed. General rule of thumb is if they're feeding for 5 minutes or less, it's comfort. Any more than 5 minutes is a nutritive feed. If you're unsure, I'd always keep a feeding log overnight, and that way you can see what time they're feeding, how long the feed went for, and also another telltale sign that they may be ready to drop that early morning feed is if they wake at 6 or 7 and they're not hungry. So that might be an indication that you can drop that early morning feed and just do the dream feed. The dream feed's normally the last feed that I leave, and then I wean them off that. So you'd want to make sure that any patterns in behaviour are sort of consistent. So if they're only feeding for 5 minutes or less that one time in the morning, that's over a good sort of 3 days or more, not just a random event. So there is definitely more information that I have on my weaning article, how to wean, different weaning options, depending if you're breastfeeding or bottle feeding, or if you're co-sleeping and making that transition. So the link is below, so have a look at that. Obviously I don't have time to run through every option because every family and situation is different. So definitely have a look at that article. So another thing I did want to address obviously is what Carly asked me about, certain times, whether teething or illness or milestones, and if you have already weaned, what happens if you go back to feeding overnight. It's not a huge drama. The whole 12-24 months of their life is full of milestones and sleep regressions with teething and illness, etc. So my recommendation is always to respond to your baby and what they need at the time, and when they are teething or in pain or having an illness or going through a milestone, they generally need more from you. Especially when you're sort of looking at 8 to 9 months weaning, keeping in mind that there's a growth spurt at 9 months, so you may need to have the additional feed overnight for a little while. If you have night weaned and you're no longer doing a dream feed, I would recommend even up to 12 months introducing the dream feed for a week or so, just to rule out hunger as a reason for night wakings. But absolutely fine to reintroduce the feed. So once you've night weaned, doesn't mean that you never have to feed overnight again. What habits become habits from behaviour that persists. So not something that you do for a few days or something. You'd have to be doing it for a long time. So I still think definitely give your baby what it needs at the time. and you can't go wrong really. I always say follow your gut. So if you have any other questions about night weaning or any other questions that you'd like me to post about, please feel free to either comment on the thread tonight or just email me at sophie@happybabysleep.com.au. I'd love to have another video post from you on a question, so feel free to do that, and look forward to hearing from you. I'll speak to you soon. Bye.